In this video I want to start by addressing one simple question. Why is media and technology so important?
To start the conversation broadly, it encompasses everything. It is the basis of thought and communication. It slows down and speeds up time. It makes the world smaller. It dematerializes spaces. It changes landscapes and cities. It changes how you behave and how you live. It is a fundamental building block of how we perceive the world around us and how we interact with it. We live in a time of a communications technological revolution paralleled by few other periods in history. Investigating how this is changing our world and ourselves is the basis of my work. What really interests me, and I think many artists throughout time, is the challenge of using the tools, ideas and technologies of my time to try and observe and expose new realities of the world we live in. To put it really simply, I don't want to explain, I want to explore. We experience the world indirectly through our senses, and to most people and in art, often the visual is the most dominant way we understand the world around us. Indeed, the cultural tradition of linking sight with truth is ingrained in language. After all, seeing is believing, my eyes were opened. But we know this comes with various problems, such as our eyes lie to us all the time.
Colors do you see? On the one hand, we have Team Black and Blue. On the other, Team White and Gold. We asked on Twitter and got hundreds of responses for both White and Gold and Black and Blue. For what it's worth, we both saw Black and Blue and thought this was a massive prank at first. So how can it be possible for people to see it so differently?
And our ears lie to us too.
Laurel, 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 Laurel.
All of this is to say that relying on human senses to gauge reality isn't necessarily the universal truth we might presume it is. It may be fair to argue that we don't even have direct access to the external world, but instead access mediated by our senses. We see the world through these filters. We are our own unreliable narrators. This is the brain's interpretation of information received by the senses. Your brain never directly sees light. These are signals from the senses that your brain decodes, much like the way the image the camera on your phone sees is computed by its software. The difficulty of really seeing is a great challenge, especially as we live in a time of great technological turmoil. Uncovering the contemporary is a hard task. As McLuhan says, we naturally see the world we're in what he calls the rearview mirror.
Well, we hit a little snag when the universe sort of collapsed on itself. But Dad seemed cautiously optimistic.
And back to the rearview mirror.
Oh, yeah, but it's like our Victorian mechanical environment. It's a rearview mirror image. Every age creates as a utopian image, a nostalgic rearview mirror image of itself, which puts it thoroughly out of touch with the present. The present is the enemy. The present is the, and this will delight you, Norman, the present is only faced in any generation by the artist. The artist is prepared to study the present as his material because it is the area of challenge to the whole sensory life, and therefore it's anti-utopian. It's a world of anti-values, and the artist who comes in contact with the present produces an avant-garde image that is terrifying to the contemporaries.
I still come back to my...
Shedding preconception allows new tools to be used differently. For example, game engines, one of the main staples of my work, is as it sounds, a piece of software designed with an endpoint of an interactive conventional video game in mind, literally the game's engine. Using this without that endpoint opens up new possibilities. We're all governed to a degree by our experiences and our ability to think, which in a way is therefore limited by our imagination. If you were taking a photo of me and zoomed in close enough, you'd see a series of atoms, quantum clouds that are bound together by the same rules as the universe itself. If you take a 3D scan of your head, the geometry of your head is extracted. It can then be animated, given its own space, your voice synthesized and your movements studied and captured and dissected. It is structural distortion brought to life by the information the technology is fed, and in a very real way, a version of yourself as valid and real as the one you sense every day. A lens for an eye, bites for brains. In my series of paintings, Six Self-Portraits Decomposition, this version of myself is depicted with the structure of the 3D model exposed in different places as the avatar moves. Biological and visual decay, the interior of the model, the psychology of the self. The act of painting a portrait is by nature an exposing process, even when this method is used. They sit on my studio wall and I feel a little self-conscious about them, not because I worry that they're not good works, but because maybe through the act of painting oneself, the resulting images are harder to show publicly. I think it's hard to draw the line between me and my avatar.
Dialogue between media, why painting never dies.
There could be a presumption that contemporary artists interested in technology and new media might only be interested in digital-based work. I think this denies one the chance to explore the changing contexts and dialogues. The present is always changing the past.
How can this relate to digital media now? How does new media relate to old media?
I think this can be a very simple proposition which doesn't necessarily need to consider the specific context of either a digital or, for the sake of argument, a painted work. That is, that they inherently hold different qualities which have some relevant dialogues with each other, some similar, some very contrasting, sometimes totally disconnected. For example, on the whole, digital media can produce a vast quantity of images very quickly. This could be simply by a Google image search, or from making a simple 3D model or game from which an infinite amount of images could be rendered with ever-increasing speeds. Multiple cameras could be viewed simultaneously. A computer does not need to create the illusion of physics or light. They're calculated in a very real way. This may sound like something uniquely digital, but in an interesting similarity to the last great period of communications revolution in the 1400s, driven by the invention of the printing press, both that and the digital revolution in the last 20 years have enabled unprecedented volumes of content at their times, and at greatly reduced prices and at comparative lightning speeds. In contrast, a painting generally requires a focus on a singular image. They have a high material cost. A painting is slow and mediated by the painter. They require the artist often to build up an image over time. Space and light are illusionary. Smudges and brushstrokes can approximate a changing scene as the artist works. Intricate portraits, like those of Hans Holbein, can create the illusion of a snapshot in time. Multiple viewpoints can be read onto the same image, like Duchamp's nude descending a staircase, or a drip of paint can be a drip of paint. Of course, when we look at a painting, we know it's illusionary. The use of lenses and perspective helps the artist simulate space on canvas. The closed view on the Ghent altarpiece I particularly like in its meta-meshing of real and illusionary space. The light from its spot in the cathedral providing the angle for the light in the painting, literally meshing realities.
Closer.
Okay.
What is he doing? I don't know. Closer.
Okay.
Closer.
Okay.
Okay, computer, what's this?
A jewel.
No, this.
I don't know.
Ugh, never mind, I'll take it from here. It's the reflection of a window. This window in the Cathedral of St. Bavo, right across the place where the Ghent altarpiece was hung, after it was done. What? Yes, Jan van Eyck was a real sucker for detail, so he painted a tiny, tiny, tiny reflection of the church window inside the jewel. He also matched all the other lighting in his masterpiece exactly with the lighting in the church. Like here in the shadows. Even the frame has shadows. But why? Because Van Eyck wanted to bring you closer to God by making it look like you could step into the painting and go hang out with the angels. Come, come, come.
That's so cool. My mind is blown. Thank you, Jan van Eyck. I love you.
These painters throughout time have redefined or articulated ideas of their contemporary. This discussion could continue into a broader look at art of the 20th century. Nam June-paik, Bruce Nauman, Chris Bird and Hito Sterol, Bill Viola, Marina Abramovich, Yoko Ono, Christo, whatever, are all big names who've utilised media, whether video, sound, TV, live performance, thought, the internet, land, computers, to create work. Regardless of the specific content or subject matter, or even the motivation of the works, these artists, through their methods and use of materials, broke from tradition, or to come full circle here, they smashed the rearview mirror. In a world of flux, it would seem counterintuitive to suggest any medium could be exhausted. This position presumes a lack of discourse with the past and an unrelenting forward-thinking progression. It ignores the possibility of new relationships. The inherent qualities of any medium or tool and how it can give us new perspectives or way to see the world is not limited to the art discussed above. Of course, it's not really limited to art at all. In my Joiners series, I employed the use of my iPhone 7 and its camera, my PC, some free software, my living room, painting tools, and myself. I stood in actual space, took a series of short videos using my phone camera lens, and I ran these through a program to make models in which I reassemble my living room in a game engine program. From this project, I selected a few images which I rendered in oil on canvas. There are some new relationships forming here. My eye, my camera's lens, its software interpreting the room, and the computer constructing a new physical space from this data, reinterpreting the room. The act of painting pushes further the symbiotic exchange going on here. I see, and through the act of painting, of interpreting sometimes very intricate abstractions made by the computer into real smudges of paint with a brush onto a flat plane back in actual space, I reconstruct the room. Actual space, my eye, my camera's lens, the data created, the computer's interpretation, my digital arrangement made on software, and a further analog reinvention through the use of my paint on canvas. The links between media and thought are inherent. Artists, scientists, philosophers, whoever, use tools of the time to create work and explore new ways of seeing the world. Some artists of the Fluxus movement in the 60s and 70s totally ditched objects and aesthetics in place of thoughts or ideas alone as art. Like my mother, who isn't a Fluxist artist, often tells me, thinking is harder. And of course, the ways in which the nature of the world are understood is a constantly changing thing as well. Even earlier this year, scientists right here at UCL trying to map dark matter, a mysterious material thought to account for potentially 80% of all matter in the universe, produced unexpected results which could cast doubt on the accuracy of Einstein's theory of relativity. If this disparity is true, then maybe Einstein was wrong. What is the point of this? The point is the nature of the universe is potentially still a total mystery. Physicists always seem to be the first people to say we know absolutely nothing. Richard Feynman said, "I have approximate answers and possible beliefs and different degrees of uncertainty about different things, but I'm not absolutely sure of anything, and there are many things I don't know anything about, such as whether it means anything to ask why we're here. I don't have to know an answer. I don't feel frightened not knowing things by being lost in a mysterious universe without any purpose, which is the way it really is as far as I can tell." I feel like in this talk I've spent a lot of time trying to cast doubt on saying anything for certain. I think this relates to my motivation to explore the world rather than attempt to explain it. Something which seems at best would result in work only fleetingly relevant to a point in time, or at worst, futile in a world changing so quickly in ways far more complex than I'm able to understand. For that reason, trying to cast judgment on media and its effects doesn't seem so interesting to me, and arguably to have preconceptions when approaching making a work could get in the way of allowing more revealing aspects to be exposed in the process. The aim of this talk has been to try and communicate why this stuff fascinates me so much, and why I think we live in a time where art making is filled with possibilities presented by analog and digital worlds converging, and the resulting gaps between them and the changing relationships these present. In my work, I want to explore how this is affecting our world, a world that is always in flux, and to try to study the oscillations. Thank you.
Dear Mr. Scully, Mac rules the world. Your Mac friend, Brent Rambo.